All right, Matt Loux, author of Salt Water Taffy, one of our favorites. Are you ready to answer 6 very simple questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Question number 1 is, how did you get started working in comics?
Okay, I got started by doing them myself, like kind of like just like a lot of people just when you want to do comics, and it's a difficult industry to kind of like get started in a like just out of school do a comic and get it published. So a lot of times what you do is you just kind of self-publish, and that's what I did. And I started by just doing kind of like a few small, like 8-page mini comics. And I think maybe the third one I did was actually the first part of my first book, Sidescrollers. And it was like about the first 20 pages of that story. And then I started, giving them to different companies to try to get some, some feedback or see if anyone was interested in it. And Oni Press was one of the companies that I sent that to, and they rejected it. But it kind of started a recognition, where I would kind of talk to them when I saw them, and I would kind of show them the new stuff I had been working on. And I was emailing the head editor at the time was Jamie Rich. He's the author of Spell Checkers and a lot of books for Oni. And it was before he left that position just to do full-time writing. So I was sending him stuff like periodically, like every couple of months of just what I was working on. And at one point I was just like, I really love your books. I'm a big fan of Oni's. If you guys ever need an artist for anything, I'd be very happy to work on something. And then about a week later I got a call from James Jones saying, we'd really like you to try out for this book F-Stop, which is written by Anthony Johnston. And I was like, yes, I would love to. So we did that, and they really liked it, Anthony liked it, and we went ahead and did it. So after that, they were like, so what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I kind of have this idea for this comic, which at the time wasn't called Sidescrollers, but I was like, I wrote up a new pitch, and I sent them the pitch, and like they really loved it. And my editor who worked on it said that it was like the only pitch he's ever laughed out loud to just the pitch. So they ended up going for it, and then we did my first book that I both through and wrote, Sidescrollers. And it's just funny because it was first rejected, and then, maybe 2 years later they ended up picking it up. So.
Yeah. Well, it also made the top 10 great graphic novels for teens list,
it did.
Which was very exciting.
That was very exciting, and I was so happy, and I love libraries, and I'm such a proponent of them. It was such a thrill to be on that list. I was so happy, and yeah.
It's pretty cool. All right, question number 2. Did you read comics when you were a kid? And if so, who were some of your influences when you were a child?
I definitely read comics as a kid, and I had like a bunch of different influences. Let's see, I really liked the Peanuts comics when I was a kid. My grandmother used to get the little paperback collections of Peanuts at yard sales, and she would give them to me, and I loved them. I also loved Garfield as a kid. I was a really big Garfield fan, and I think I'll always like get Garfield's back. I know a lot of people like to diss on Jim Davis these days, but those were really funny when you were a kid, and it's very, very sarcastic, and I love that kind of humor. That was probably the first of that sort of style that I got into when I was young. And then also like Carl Barks, like Donald Duck comics and Uncle Scrooge comics, and and I think eventually when I got a little older, I got into Spider-Man. When I got a little bit older, like high school, I started getting into manga, and kind of went from there.
Cool. All right. Question number 3 is, what are you currently working on?
I'm currently working on a series, Salt Water Taffy, which some of you may have heard about. I've done 3 books in the series so far. It's just a recap. It's kind of like an all-ages adventure story about 2 young brothers who are on a vacation in kind of a mysterious port town in Maine, and it's about the different adventures in this town they get into, like with sea monsters and ghost stories and treasure hunts. And it's a very fun series to work on because it's just anything that comes to my imagination, I can make a fun story for the boys. But the one I'm working on now is Volume 4, called Caldera's Revenge. It's a whaling story.
I should probably find out.
This is the preview of the cover.
They do basically just like mock-ups. It's like, let me have
it's like a ghost whaling adventure where the city of Chowder Bay, or the town of Chowder Bay, starts getting mysterious sightings of this ghost ship, and there's also these like activities like ships are getting sunk and they're not really sure what's happening, and it turns out there's a mystery between this ghost whaling ship and a whale sightings in the town, and it's a lot of fun adventure ensues. So.
Cool. All right, number 4.
Yeah.
What graphic novels or comics titles have you read in the last year that you would think are fantastic for kids?
I've just started, well, let's see, the past year I've been obsessively reading when I can afford the One Piece series. It's a manga series. It's like, I think the #1 selling manga in Japan right now, and it's actually so much fun. It's just off the wall, like it's very fun and very fun fighting and fun adventure, and boys would love it. But it's also really goofy and silly and off the wall, and I love that kind of stuff. And it's very well drawn. It's fantastic.
All right, number 5. If you were stuck on a desert island with only one book, and this can be graphic novel or prose, what would that book be?
One book. That's kind of a hard question to put me on the spot with, but it'd probably have to be Fellowship of the Rings.
Which one?
The Lord of the Rings, and Fellowship of the Rings, because that's a book I know I can read over and over again, and I have read over and over again. Other books, I might get bored with. I don't think I could. Well, I probably could eventually, but I think that would have its longest shelf life. So.
And the last question is, what advice do you have for young comic creators?
The best advice for young comic creators that I could give is to draw comics. It sounds simple, but it's not as easy as you might think. But like, you ever want to be a professional comic artist? Whether or not you ever get published, you're never going to get published unless you draw. So yeah, I just always draw. Always draw your comics. Don't be afraid just to make them yourself if no one else wants to make them. So.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.